next guest has been in show business since he was 18 months old. He has been successful as an actor, a writer, and also a director. He, in fact, has just completed the film Night Shift. Please welcome Ron Howard. Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you. Now, is this, we know it's possible, 18 months?
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe. Yes, it is hard to believe. What was the role that you brought to life when you were 18 months old?
Crying brat, little kid, crying.
Yeah.
My dad was directing a summer stock play in Atlantic City, and they needed a crying brat. And so I would come on and cry. Had this little doll, and then right before I'd go on, I guess they'd take the little doll away from me and kind of shove me out there, and then I'd cry, and then they'd pull me off. Got a good review, though.
Well, that's good. You also got a kind of a help in your career from Mr. Reagan.
Yes, I did. There was an old show called General Electric Theater, and Ronald Reagan was the host. And when I did the program called Barnaby and Mr. O'Malley, which is from a cartoon strip, and Bert Lahr was Mr. O'Malley, and I was this little kid. It was also a pilot for a TV series at the time. Only it was my first real big part. I was 4 years old and got no billing. Had no billing whatsoever. And at the end of the show, Ronald Reagan came on and said, and by the way, our very special thanks on this Christmas program to little Ronnie Howard, who was wonderful as Barnaby. And that show didn't sell, but the next day I got offered 3 different shows, and one of them was the Andy Griffith Show. So my mom will vote for Ronald Reagan anytime, anywhere.
This is interesting because there have been a lot of guys, men and women, who started out and had a part here and a part there, and then stopped being in show business. They got to be 10 or 11 or whatever and stopped. Did you ever lose interest, or were the folks always saying, come on, Ron, do another one?
Well, they weren't doing that. They were probably going the other way, encouraging me to try to find other interests. I mean, I think they were always very concerned about that. But I loved it. Yeah. You know, I mean, people would ask me what I wanted to do, and I would always say I wanted to be an actor, writer, producer, director, cameraman, baseball player. And I had it all planned out. I really expected to stay in the business my whole life. Yeah. And when I blew my shoulder out, I really knew I had no other alternative.
Let me ask you about the schooling that you received. Are you didn't go to normal high schools? They always said they had the tutors come on and said, but does that work really?
Well, I did both. Yeah. I got to do both. I had good old Mrs. Barton on the Andy Griffith Show from the 1st grade through the 8th grade. And
she's here on this show as well.
But I would then go back to public school, something that I would really look forward to, although I'd tend to be kind of a novelty for a while.
Sure.
I remember when I first went to junior high, it was real difficult as a 7th grader. A 9th grade girl, however, came up and asked me to autograph her thigh. Well, it sounds kind of titillating now, but it scared the daylights out of me at the time. But after a couple of weeks, things would kind of calm down a little bit, and I could assimilate myself and have a real good time. I always look forward to doing that.
Now, you were in town, I can remember a couple of months ago, you were finishing the film that's...
We were doing Night Shift.
Yeah, right. Night Shift, and this, by the way, has nothing to do with the Stephen King novel, is that correct?
Right, and we had to get the rights, I guess, to the title from the book, but this is a comedy.
You worked with Mr. Winkler for how many years on Happy Days?
I was on Happy Days for 7 years. Yeah.
Now, in addition to it may have causing a problem to direct this man you now used to co-star with on the TV show, was it a problem?
Well, it turned out not to be. I mean, it was something that I did give some thought to. Obviously, I didn't think it was a big problem. I cast him. But we had this great friendship, and what happens if we don't get along suddenly in the pressure cooker? Sometimes making a movie can be kind of nerve-wracking, but we didn't. We got along great.
When I was living in Los Angeles, there was always rumors flying around that ABC and Paramount and other powerful show business entities were planning Happy Days 2000. They wanted that sucker just to go and go and go.
I think they did and still do.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think that they do. And I mean, I think in some ways that the Joni Loves Chachi show is an indication of that. I mean, should Happy Days start to tail off, I think they feel that Joni Loves Chachi could be basically Happy Days on for another 10 years.
Yeah. So was it tough for you to get out at that point? I mean, it looked like it could have been a pretty good paycheck for a while.
It was a great paycheck. Yeah. It was a really spectacular paycheck. my contract was up, and I have wanted to direct all my life. And so if I was going to stay with the show, my goal was to be assured that I was going to be able to direct, which is pretty unreasonable demand. And I knew that. I felt that they might very well let me go. They weren't going to give me that, and so I wound up making a similar deal with NBC. And for the first time in my life, really, I had some career flexibility.
Yeah,
It was great.
tough thing to do, though, I'm guessing, at the time.
It was very painful, a real difficulty.
The first film you directed was for Roger Corman, who does really inexpensive motion pictures. What was the one you did for him?
Mine was a car crash movie called Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, and it cost about what to put together?
$602,000.
Which is dirt cheap by comparison.
Yeah, Night Shift was 10 times the budget.
What kind of a profit did the Roger Corman film make?
Well, let's see. It made about $6 million in rentals and another $1 million or so in television, and so Roger probably made about $5 or $6 million out of that.
I was reading where you, as the director, were able to do 91 different scene setups in one day.
Well, myself and my second unit director, a guy named Alan Arkish, and we were both working in a demolition derby, which was the big scene, the big finale. And he was shooting car crashes, and I was shooting dialogue scenes over here, and every once in a while somebody'd almost get hit by a car, but between us we did 91 setups in one day, which is about 75 more than you ought to do.
When you were with when you were Opie, I mean, you're of course, it's hard to talk about that, but there were some great character actors on that program, weren't there?
Oh, Howard Morris and Buddy Ebsen came up. Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
He was a young character actor then.
Yeah, and the Floyd the Barber, who
Howard McNear.
Howard's
He passed
gone.
away.
Yeah.
Right.
Was anything ever peculiar happen that maybe a young fellow like yourself shouldn't be participating in or witnessing, or?
Nothing really that peculiar. Although the makeup man used to nail Andy Griffith's shoes to the floor every once in a while. Something you shouldn't do to your sixth grade teacher, but nothing really terrible.
Nailed them to the floor.
Yeah, only if Andy bought a new pair.
Yeah. Andy didn't mind this?
He'd chase them around and throw the shoes at me, and then they'd play the banjo and guitar, and everything would be okay.
When you were a kid, and I'm sorry I keep dwelling on this whenever you're here, but there's many interesting aspects of this that I don't think people are aware of. It didn't occur to me that most of your life you've been making huge sums of money. Not mostly. No, I'm right here. Not just your adult life, but since you were very, very young, you've been making large money.
Well, on the Andy Griffith Show, I got paid, compared to what people get paid now, of course, it's not that much, but I remember the first time that I really kind of came to grips with the fact that I was in a high-paying profession was when I was a huge baseball fan. And there was one year, I think it was 65 or 66, when both Don Drysdale and Sandy Koufax held out spring training together. It was huge news, and I was a big Dodger fan. And then I saw what they signed for, and it was big news that they had broken through this barrier. And I went down, I took a little piece of paper and figured out what I made during the course of the year, and I made like $5,000 more than Sandy. It actually made me sad. I didn't feel like I possibly could deserve more than Sandy.
Yeah, that must have been a staggering realization. You were in 1965. You were what? How old?
I was 11.
11. Making more than Sandy Koufax.
I know.
Man.
Life is not fair.
Let's do a commercial. And when did you want to direct? Now that almost seems like a joke anymore. Actors say, "Well, I eventually hope to direct."
Right.
But you did it and have been very successful.
Well, I used to watch my dad direct plays and things like that. He's an actor, and my pat answer when I was a kid was I want to be an actor, writer, producer, director, cameraman, and baseball player. Until I found out about Sandy and the salary.
Then sure, forget all about that. No point in wasting your time there. And you, at one point, you had some interest in a pornographic film.
Well, not deep interest.
No, but that's what I've heard. But there was.
No, when I was in college, I went to USC Film School, and I really wanted to make independent movies, and it was hard to get the money to make movies. And I was really starting to think more as a filmmaker than anything else. And Deep Throat was out there, and it made like $30 million, and it cost like $10,000 to make the movie. Yeah. And I thought, now, Opie gets laid.
No.
If I did that, I'd be... I didn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Of course you didn't do it.
They would take me out of the mainstream.
So you weren't thinking specifically of making when you just like the idea of being able to do something.
It was a stepping stone.
Yeah, but I mean, the topic would not have been X-rated, or would it have been?
It would have had to be. You got to deliver the goods.
But see, I misunderstood. I thought you only kind of had an interest in the marketability of an inexpensive film that then brings in like a gusher.
But nothing would if it wasn't, you know.
So you really, this actually crossed your mind
Well,
then?
it crossed my mind one drunken evening at college.
Well, this is just getting
on that.
better and better. Now, let's see, then Parenthood. Now, this is something very close to your heart, going from, oh God, what a miserable transition this is.
Into my life as a parent.
Yes.
Now that relates to movies.
But it's...
Well, it's a comedy.
Yeah.
And it stars Steve Martin and Mary Steenburgen,
Right.
who was on your show the other
Yeah,
night.
she's very nice.
Great.
Lovely
And,
woman.
Great. Rick
Is she
Moranis
nice to
and
work
Tom
with?
Wolfe. She's fantastic.
Yeah, and Rick Moranis
Great.
is also very funny.
It was a good group.
Yeah.
It was a good group.
A lot of kids, a lot of screaming brats on the set.
Definitely, a lot of them. Because, well, I mean, that's what the movie is about. I have 4 kids. They scream quite a bit.
How old's your oldest?
My oldest is 8.
Yeah.
My youngest is 2. And then I have twins in there in the middle.
Wow,
We're
that's
4.
great. Yeah.
That's a good group. It's a great group.
Plan to have more, or is this...
I'd say we're in a holding pattern at this point.
Now, let me ask you about is this true that the middle names of each of your kids have a added significance? Or is that...
No,
did I misunderstand that as well?
Well, you're really digging deep tonight.
I'm sorry.
And that's okay. No, it has to do with where they were conceived, because we didn't want to get into middle names of the family and so forth. There, people would be insulted that how can you use a middle name. So
their names become like the location? Is it a geographic? Is it like a name of a...
Okay,
Somebody named Milwaukee in there? Or...
my first one is Bryce Dallas Howard.
That's very nice.
That's nice.
Very distinguished name, yeah.
My middle, the twins, are Jocelyn and Paige Carlisle Howard, named after a hotel here in New York.
Ah.
And
Airport Marriott.
I actually had to act and eat my dust in order to get to direct Grand Theft Auto. You know, a modest beginning, but an important one for me. Roger was such an important figure. One of the things that I like to remind people of is that when I worked with Roger at New World Pictures, he wasn't just giving directors like myself and Jonathan Demme and Martin Scorsese and Bogdanovich, and right after me, Jim Cameron. He wasn't just giving us our first chances. He was also opening doors for people who were highly qualified, but just not in the forefront of the hiring patterns of that time, particularly women. He had more women executives and department heads on his productions than anything I had witnessed in Hollywood up to that point. And he was right. They were capable, they were great. I mentioned it to him at one point, and he said, you know what? Hollywood's too stupid to hire them. They're smart, and they're ready to do it, and they're willing to work cheap. And that's, you know, they're speaking my language. I still think about lessons that I learned making that first movie all the time. He also taught a generation to keep the audience in mind, keep the entertainment value and the promise of whatever genre you're working with in mind and deliver on that. But don't make it a formula. You have to put your own voice into that. And you can. And you can be creative. And you can be personal. And still have the scares, the laughs, the thrills, whatever it is that the movie is promising. And he was very astute about that. And he did it in his own work as a director, which was excellent. And he taught it.
Hi, Mom, it's the